Skull Babylon here, one of your friendly hosts for Paradigm Shift Radio, along with Michael Brazel. Paradigm Shift Radio is a new interactive show to assist in the evolution of consciousness. You're about to listen to the July 14th show when we had Free Spirit on as our guest. Free Spirit is an Ascension teacher here to help assist all other beings in understanding some of the changes we are going through on personal levels in these times of new energies and transitions, physically and spiritually. During the show, we covered a lot of ground in the 2-hour period. With the goal of education in mind, parts of the conversation are aimed in helping you, the listener, understand the reality of concepts like multidimensional existence, ascension, how to work towards keeping your body in the healthier state for experiencing these new energies, communicating with entities on other dimensional levels, a group meditation at the 1-hour mark, the concept of aliens and light beings living from the heart, experiences with Ayahuasca, and more. So lots of exciting stuff to share with everyone. That said, Paradigm Shift Radio is working its way towards becoming something self-sustainable, though in order for this to happen, we need your help. So if you enjoy the show and would like to see more of it as much as we do, then consider donating at paradigmshiftlondon.com/donate. Your generous contributions will go directly towards helping the Paradigm Shift communities expand and making sure that we are able to continue bringing you an infinite amount of fun and educational shows for the future. If you have not yet, like the page on Facebook at facebook.com/paradigmshiftradio to stay in the loop with what's happening and to get involved with our episodes to come. Paradigm Shift Radio is here to be a shared creation of the community. So stay tuned past this music for the show's original recording, subscribe, and leave any comments and questions to help continue the conversation. Enjoy!
Hello everyone out there in the blog Talkosphere. Welcome to another edition of Paradigm Shift Radio. I am one of your hosts tonight, psychic medium, modern mystic Mike Brazel, and we have on the line my co-host tonight is Skull Babylon. Skull, you there?
Yeah, I am. Are we good to go this time?
Yes. Despite the fact that Mercury retrograde starts in T-minus. So good thing we're not doing the show at midnight, because then it could have been problems.
Well, you know what? Today is interesting. I'm sure some people have been paying attention to this, but we are actually in the midst of receiving a couple of solar flares heading in our direction. So, you were aware of this, Mike?
Oh yeah, I heard. We had a conversation today at my shop with a coworker of mine who's very much into the astrology and new science, and he reminded me that we are going into massive solar flare month, as well as Mercury retrograde, and Uranus is also in retrograde. So lots of planets moving backwards and wreaking havoc on communication, massive change coming, and then of course the solar flares, which will be a great lead into our guest tonight.
That's right. So for those who have heard about the show ahead of time, you'll know that our guest for tonight is Free Spirit. Now, Free Spirit is a very interesting man from Switzerland, and I'm just going to read you the bio that we do have written up for him. And followed by that, we're just going to do a little bit more chat and some Paradigm Shift news, and then we'll probably throw to a break, but then that's when the interview will get started. So Free Spirit is here to help us understand some of the transformations we and the Earth are going through at this pivotal moment. There are many things that we can change, but what we cannot change. There are many things that we cannot change, but what we can change is how we respond to these changes. So among many of the other things, we will be discussing pineal gland cleansing, 2012 prophecies, who the star beings are and how we can prepare to meet them, the idea of aliens, quote-unquote, disclosure theories, and anything else that you guys want to talk about. So that means you guys in the live chat joining us right now. And before we really get this show started and rolling, everyone who's listening to the show, just send this out on your Facebook page. Let others know that the show is live and we want them to be part of it, even if they're just going to listen. Not everyone has to be in the chat. It's a big part to just sit there and listen, but for those who really want to get that extra step up on the excitement and the interaction, join us in the live chat. You can post some of your questions there and just chit-chat with everyone in the meantime. So that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, and interact in the chat. So make this an interactive experience. If you do have questions, though, send it to myself and Skull via private message in the chat. That way we keep your questions up on our screen. Just because as the chat begins to unfold, we lose half of the questions in the scroll. So just send them to us in a private message. The number to call in tonight, 347-326-9263, 347-326-9263. Come in, we'll put you into the queue, and we'll be taking questions later in the show, specifically on the topics at hand. So some of you are crossovers from some of the other shows that we host here on this channel. So just be sure that you're calling in with things that are in relation to the topic. I don't think our guest tonight does psychic-type readings. So we'll try to keep the questions in line with Ascension and some of the things that Skull mentioned in our bio, and we'll be reading that bio again after we take our break. So is there anything going on in Paradigm Shift right now, Skull?
Oh, there's always something going on. And it's great to just have this sort of 7-day gap between one show to the next, because a lot can happen in 1 week, I tell you. So since the last week, there was word of new Paradigm Shift communities getting started, and that has since accelerated. I know for a fact that Paradigm Shift Muskoka, which is partially organized by my good friend Rebecca, her Paradigm Shift community had one of their first meetings this week, so congratulations to them. I think they just had it at one of the community centers, or like a community hall area, and that's great, because for those of you who may be new to this whole idea, Paradigm Shift is a collective of youth-initiated communities that are encouraging open-mindedness, healthy living, and the evolution of consciousness. So if you would like to find more people in your community to be able to take some of the topics and conversations that you hear on our show tonight and take those into your real life, your real waking life, and find other people to practice talking to them about these topics that are usually less talked about, try starting up a Paradigm Shift community, or call it something else. It doesn't matter. But basically, all you really need is an open space, like a library or a bookstore or a park or anything, and then sort of create a poster, create an event, and invite people out, and create a Facebook page, and invite some of your friends. Surely you would know a couple people. Tell them to tell other people, because at this point, a lot of us have been doing a lot of research on our own, but needless to say, like in a community of like a good couple thousand, there's at least, I would say, around 10% of that 1,000 who are genuinely interested and currently researching a lot of these topics on their own, but just haven't walked out the door with it on their sleeve yet, but it is in their heart. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to get people to showcase and not be afraid to talk about these sort of things, because it's important. It's what we're going through, and not just on a personal level, but on a bigger global scale of what the Earth is going through right now as well. So it's pretty exciting stuff, needless to say.
Absolutely. And just stuff going on everywhere. Here we're preparing to do one of our first meetings here. I'm working with some of the local groups here to try to get something started so we can get our first group actually on the calendar. I'm doing a channeling session later in the month, and we're probably going to use that as a launching point for our first meeting and gathering. So stay tuned, folks in the DC metro area. And also another outlet you can use is meetup.org. There are a lot of spiritual communities out there. If you don't have one in your area, start one. So that's one of the reasons. I mean, I saw Skull's video, and we'll post a video again in the chat, but it was a really inspiring video, and there's so many disconnected groups here in our area, and everyone has a piece to the puzzle. Here in the D.C. area, we have groups that do psychic-specific and channeling-specific work. We have other groups that do earth-based religious studies, and we have other groups that do shamanistic studies. So there's this variety of groups here in the area, and one of the things that I thought here specifically that a Paradigm Shift would allow us to do was to bring all of our groups together for the purpose of co-creation, discussion, and growth. And remember, it doesn't have to be something massive. Even if it's you and a couple friends sitting at a coffee shop having these discussions, have the discussions. If there's things you want to see us talk about on the show, or if there's our guests that you want to see on the show, email them to myself or Skull via Facebook, or you can email me directly at michael@michaelbrazel.com, and just let us know. Not every show is going to have a guest, so we do topical type shows as well. So if there's things that you want to see discussed, be sure you let us know. This is your show as well. We're just the tour guides on this conscious evolution project, so this is your show. So let us know what you want to talk about. Otherwise, you leave the topics up to us, and that can get kind of scary. So.
Yeah, and just another thing, guys. One thing that was launched to help keep things organized, to keep things central, is the Facebook group that we are calling Paradigm Shift Central. So if you have a Paradigm Shift community that you have started, whether it's a page or a group on Facebook, join that Facebook group. So that's in the live chat right now, the link. So Paradigm Shift Central, even if you don't have the actual community, but you're going to start one, part of what we're using Paradigm Shift Central for is a single Facebook page where people can go and try to hook up with other people in their area. You know, we simply have like a single discussion thread right now, and it's basically just a roll call, and people put where they are and, you know, then the fact that they want to meet up, and then basically anyone else who's reading that will be able to spot someone who's in their location and then just sort of take it from there. Like, we don't have to hold your hand through the whole process. We're just sort of creating a platform, and then the experiment just sort of unfolds from there. So it's really, again, in the same way of what this show is, this is really something that it's not a single idea that me and Michael have in mind. It's just this experiment, and what we make of it is totally up to you guys. So definitely, this is something that is definitely belonging to everyone and yet owned by no one. So it's pretty cool, guys. And let's see, what's our time at right now? Because I did just want to go over a couple news things. This is something that, for anybody who's in the London area, I want to let you guys know that in theme with Paradigm Shift, there is an event that's coming up on August 11th. It is called it's a Look Festival, and Look stands for Locally Organized Organic Knowledge, and it's going to be a waste-free eco-fest. This is actually the third year that it's run for, and it's run by our good friend Jessica Conlon, who is also part of the London Youth Advisory Council, and it's going to be, again, on Saturday, August 11th, in Queen's Park, which is next to the Western Fair. So again, this is for London, Ontario. But even if you guys are out of town, you know, some people who are just a little bit outside of London, feel free to come in and join us for the day. It is only a single day event, but it's definitely a great place for people in the community to come together. There's going to be vendors, there's going to be music, there's going to be booths, there's going to be people from the Parish of London community probably sitting around on the grass doing some meditations, and it's just going to be a good chance to chill out and meet other like-minded folks in your communities. So if you guys are in the area, come check it out, and go through Paradigm Shift London Facebook page, and you'll find a link for the Look Festival on there, or you can go to lookitsaparty.com. That's the website as well. So just wanted to let you guys know about that. But that is all the news we're going to be able to fit in for today, and I think it's about time that we get the show rolling, and Free Spirit is going to come on shortly, and I believe Mike is later in the show we're going to be asking for people to call in so they can take part in the conversation with us live on air. Is that right?
That's correct. So one of the things we want to be sure that you all know is the phone number to call in. So that's 347-326-9263, 347-326-9263. Call in. Just be very direct with what you're calling in with. The questions should be in relation to the topic that we're just discussing for the evening. So, you know, just listen into the show. If you don't want to call in, it's okay. Post your question in the chat room. If you can, though, try to send it to myself or Skull. A lot of stuff is happening in the chat. The chat moves, and it's hard for us to see the questions. So send it to us in a private message so that we have it on our screens. Also, lots of other shows happening throughout the week. Our next show after this one is going to be The Psychic and the Witch, myself and David Salisbury. We have a lot of things going on with the show, and I'll be doing a wrap-up at the end, but we have a lot of guests coming on this month that are going to be phenomenal on some of the other shows, and I'll do a quick rundown of that when we close out. But so we have a new experiment we're going to try tonight, because, you know, talking about experiments and this being a process of evolution of consciousness. So why don't you go ahead and tell everyone what we're going to be doing for our little break here before we bring Free Spirit on.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Let me say that as soon as I just correct myself on what I just said about the Look Festival. The website is not .com, it's .ca, because I just double-checked it myself. .com takes you to some other Asian website. But if you want to find out more about the Look Festival, go to lookitsaparty.ca. So for anyone in London, join us August 11th, which is a Saturday at Queen's Park next to the Western Fair. But what we're going to be doing today, guys, right after, in between, you let some more people know that we're live on air by sending this message out to your friends, because we want to get more people involved in this, and you'll understand why in a second as I'm about to tell you what we're going to do. At about, I'd say, let's try and, Mike, let's do this over that moment between just before midnight, so we pass through midnight. And then what we're going to be doing, guys, we're actually going to be doing on-air meditation. So we have an audio track set up, and we're going to talk about this as we get closer to it, and we're going to have like an intention that we're going to set. And then basically we're going to like set the harmonic frequencies to play, and then we're all going to basically take part in this meditation. So for the people who are listening at home, and even for the people who are listening to this in the future as an MP3 file, or even on the YouTube video, then you can do it too, because even though you may be in a different time than us, you're still in some way connected to that energy. So again, this is sort of an experiment, but the whole idea that if we can get, say, like 100, 200, 300 people listening to the show and all of them meditating at the same time with a shared intent, that sounds like a lot of potential behind that. So it's definitely something that we want to get people involved with, and that's pretty exciting. So we'll do that at the top of the hour of the show as we transition between Saturday and Sunday. So,
all right. So
there you go.
So there you have it. So if you're not following the show yet, be sure you click the follow us button so you stay in tune with all the stuff that happens on this channel, and especially to any changes we make to the show. So this is a show where we have a guest on, so this will be a 2-hour edition of our show. And yes, please go and share the archive shows. Listen to some of the archive shows that we have. We had Teal Scott on last week. Go out and share those shows. Listen to them, and let everyone else know. Share on your Facebook group. Share the group message that we're putting out there. Try to get as many people to tune in as possible, especially now that we're doing some of these new and more fun things like these consciousness meditations, where we'll try to do some kind of intentional work with that so that we can create positive change. And that energy gets imprinted into the archive shows. So go back and listen to those meditations. So you can download those shows to your MP3s players, and then you can go back and listen to them again and listen to the meditation and to the show again. Develop some of that connection to the information. Go out and share that information with your groups. So are we going to go straight into guest?
If we're ready to, I think we can.
Yeah. So you want to read the intro again, and I'll bring him on?
Sure. All right. So for those who may just be tuning in, tonight's guest is Free Spirit. Now, Free Spirit is also an author of 2 books, which you can get and learn more about at his website, which is awakening2012.co.uk. And Free Spirit himself is he is here to help us understand some of the transitions we and the Earth are going through at this pivotal moment. Because there may be some things that we cannot change, but what we can change is how we respond to these changes. So among other things, what we're going to be discussing is pineal gland cleansing, 2012 prophecies, who the star beings are and how we can prepare to meet them, the idea of aliens, and disclosure theories, and anything else that you guys want to see brought up live in the show, which means questions that you're sending us as PMs in the chat. So Free Spirit, if you've seen his videos and on his YouTubes, you'll know he's a very optimistic and positive guy, and he's definitely got a lot of knowledge to share. So without hesitation, let's welcome him onto the show.
All right, 1 second here. Hello, Free Spirit. Are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you.
All right, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight on Paradigm Shift Radio.
Hi.
All right.
Thanks for having me here.
Oh, this is important. You know, we're only 4 episodes into Paradigm Shift right now, but it's great when we don't have to try too hard to get someone such as yourself on the show, when the guests themselves are actually recognizing the potential that a project like this has. And I think it's a great platform to share some of the messages that you express in your work. So thank you for being here, Free Spirit. Okay. Now, just wanted to check. We don't have is the audio delay between us isn't really too noticeable or anything. I think we're pretty good technically.
Yeah, we're good. So. Yeah, tech-wise, everything looks good right now.
All right.
So far,
awesome.
so good.
All right. Awesome, guys. So. All right. So, Michael, what topic would you like to see brought up first?
Well, I think, because this is something that's coming up a lot, not just in the circles that we all tend to run in with the new thought and new science, but just in general, the idea of ascension. And I've watched a lot of your videos on the ascension process, Free Spirit, and I really like your perspective. Just for those who may not be familiar with what ascension is and how you define it, how do you define ascension?
For me, I see ascension as transmuting our bodies into a higher dimension of light. And this enables us to leave the mortal condition and become an immortalized light being in a much higher dimension of consciousness.
So do you feel that ascension is the physical ascension of the body, or do you also go into some of the other aspects like just spiritual ascension, where we just transmute the energy of our consciousness into space versus leaving the physical body?
Well, the spiritual ascension comes first, and when you engage with that process enough, then the physical ascension naturally follows, and you'll be able to transmute your body into a different crystalline form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now that's something that, you know, a lot of people, they're convinced that this reality is very cut and dry. Like, we're so commonly walking through our everyday life in this density where things are quite physical. But even within that physicality, there is, now this is sort of my understanding, the ability for like matter to almost bend and sort of for rules to slightly sort of, for that illusion to sort of, for the veil to become thinner and thinner. And, you know, I sort of think of the ideas of like, you know, like there is no spoon sort of thing. And even the idea of spoon bending, because like spoon bending, my best guess, there actually is like some reality to that. Now I'm wondering, like, does this whole like sort of transmutation of matter within the spiritual and physical ascension, is that like the reason we can bend a spoon? Is that related to the reason that we can actually transmute our physical body? Is that same sort of thing happening just on different levels there?
Basically, yes. It means there's access to different dimensions where you can manipulate and transmute matter from a different perspective.
Oh. Cool. Michael, do you want to just...
Yeah, so, you know, with the ascension, so we are moving from this space into another space, and people like Barbara Hand-Cloud talk about the multi-layered dimensions, you know, we being in the third dimensional energy. Where do you see us transmuting to? Do you see us going through different layers, through the multiple dimensions, like from here to fourth and then to fifth, or do you see a jump straight from this dimension into fifth dimension? And how do you define the different dimensions beyond this tangible physical reality?
I see there's a great opportunity at this time for human beings to ascend straight into the fifth dimension, and the fifth dimension is the timeless vibration of love and light, and the fourth dimension is simply the lower astral plane. So people don't want to be too tied up in this idea of the fourth dimension, because it's just a layer of emotional garbage and junk that's out there from our cleansing processes. So people want to jump straight to the fifth.
So the fourth dimension, for our listeners, because again, I think a lot of this, one thing that we have to keep in mind consciously is the idea that a lot of our listeners may be new to this information, and some of the words that we're commonly using to us may sound second nature, but I think it's good that we just sort of step back a bit and do our best as teachers to sort of explain things educationally from a very sort of simplistic point of view, or help us understand things better through relativity and through comparison. So what I was going to say is that the fourth dimension, what Free Spirit, what you're referring to as the fourth dimension, is this the same place that we go to when we're dreaming? Is that what you refer to as the fourth dimension? Is that astral plane?
It's a very low plane. It's called the lower astral plane. So many people in a high consciousness will basically bypass that and go to the middle astral plane. Now, the middle astral plane, this is the fifth dimension. And then you have the upper astral plane, which is the sixth dimension. And in order to ascend, you need to break through into the middle astral.
So what has been some of your personal experiences with these other dimensions? Like how have you reached these experiences yourself growing up and to where you are now?
Well, for me, I cleansed my pineal gland of harmful toxins like fluoride in the tap water and mercury in the tooth fillings. And at the same time, I did some work with the shamanic medicines, the Ayahuasca, and alongside that I've had to do a lot of heart healing, you know, learning how to love and forgive and to accept myself so I can heal some of those karmic emotional issues that prevent us from seeing these higher realities.
Now, when you're accessing these higher realities, it commonly for yourself, it's in a meditative, would you even say like meditative, like trance-like state?
In the beginning, it's through meditation and the dream work, but once you've made a conscious bridge into those dimensions, you can experience it from the 3D present moment, the here and the now.
Now, that sort of ties in with our last episode when we had our guest Teal Scott on, because one thing that really stuck with me was the idea that she could literally like see the energy that is between the space consistently. Like she didn't have that filter when she was brought into this world, which is a very rare thing, so to speak. But it reflects the idea that when these filters are sort of pulled back, when our pineal gland is more open, when our third eye is more open, that we are literally going to be able to see these energies. So is this something for free spirit that you can tap into? Like if you were to consciously try, like can you literally see more energies around you, so to speak? Then go ahead.
I can see this pretty much all the time, and last night there was a huge solar flare and this accelerated my vision. So last night I was able to see different dimensional planes, I was able to see distant galaxies, and all of that was from the present moment here.
Michael, did you want to throw something in there?
Yeah, so one of the things I think that you mentioned just a few minutes ago that I find interesting that a lot of people who talk about ascension work don't mention is forgiveness and doing forgiveness work. I think this one of the things that in all areas of spirituality tends to be something that blocks most of us from actually engaging a process, holding on to some of those karmic obligations that may no longer suit us by doing forgiveness work. What was your process in doing forgiveness? Was it just a matter of saying the affirmation or doing an action to actually let go of some of those things?
Well, for me, it was a much deeper cleansing. I had to go and confront my fears, and I had to resolve childhood traumas and look at where I've been hurt as a child or in previous relationships, and I had to feel into that pain and forgive it and release it. Because if you don't release this pain, it kind of sits there and keeps your vibration dense, and this will prevent you from opening up to the profound love of the star beings.
Nice. So do you find, because forgiveness work I think is the one thing that most people struggle with, did you find that came easy for you once you started to do some of the other work? So kind of saying that once you started to really engage the ascension process, did that lead you into doing the forgiveness work, or were you doing your forgiveness work all along as part of your ascension process?
The ascension process started first. The star beings stepped in and said, now it's time for you to begin your process. And with their assistance, they showed me the different areas that I had to work with. And it is quite intense that people need to engage with this so they can push through and get to the other side.
So, Free Spirit, what are some practical tips? Because one of the things that I like to focus on here is from Paradigm Shift Radio is the idea of practicality. What are some tips and suggestions and techniques, either meditation or lifestyle-wise, that you can give to our listeners to help them sort of move forward on their own life path to begin experiencing some of these similar energies that you have experienced?
The best thing people can do is be very centered in their heart chakra. So when they're meditating, they can breathe very deeply and breathe into the heart and feel into that space and get some expansion into there and become conscious of their deeper feelings.
Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of meditation, though, like what would be some sort of practical suggestions you would have for people in terms of, because when I think of the pineal gland, like I understand that like meditation goes hand in hand with like the development of the brain. Like even the idea of juggling, like physically juggling in real life, is something that is going to help like bridge the connections and strengthen the connections between the hemispheres in our brain. So I'd just be curious as to like why meditation plays such a vital role in this process from your opinion.
Well, my personal experience is that the mental Buddhist form of meditation isn't actually that helpful. and the form of meditation is helpful is the letting go, the surrendering into your deeper heart nature. And that is important because the heart is the gateway to source and all of these other dimensions. And if you don't do this letting go, you stay stuck in this 3D linear consciousness.
Mm-hmm. So, Michael, did you have something?
Yeah, so one thing, I was just looking on your website, Free Spirit, and you talk about diet and how diet can affect the release of some of the toxins within your pineal gland. Because I feel that may be a really grounded and really practical way for some people to engage the process. Some of us, I think, sometimes have a hard time wrapping our heads around meditation, and for some of us, we don't even engage meditation as deep as we can. Food and the way we connect to the things that we eat sometimes is a good first step for a lot of people to take. So I was just looking on your website, and you have some interesting perspectives on how food can do that. What are some things you may give to our listeners and how they can use food to help cleanse out the pineal?
Well, the first thing people need to do is alkalize their body, because many human beings are existing in an acidic state, and when your body is acidic, then this creates a lot of toxic buildup, and this creates a lot of illness and toxicity. So people can alkalize their diets with green vegetables, green juices, and the superfoods. And these alkalizing foods start to push the toxins out of the pineal. And at the same time, people need to look at the sources of toxins, so the tap water, the tooth fillings, the pharmaceuticals, and people need to start to avoid these substances so they're not continuing to poison the pineal.
So what kind of foods do you eat to work as part of that cleansing regimen? Are there specific foods that you recommend people doing? I noticed on your website that you have some downloads for some raw recipes. Do you primarily do a complete raw recipe diet, or do you have a cycle that you go through personally?
Basically, right now, I'm about 80% raw after being 100% raw for 2 years. And my diet primarily consists of lots of smoothies, bananas, avocados, and then all of the dark green superfoods. Like, these are really important. The wheatgrass, the spirulina, and the chlorella. So I eat a lot of that on a daily basis. And then I have raw chocolates and other cakes made from these superfoods. And I don't have the bread, I don't have pasta, and I don't have too much cooked food. So my diet is very light and pure.
So what about
sorry, go ahead, Mike.
So what about physical engagement of the body? Do you do things like yoga or qigong or energy movement within the body to also engage the process, or do you just do meditation and dietary changes?
For me, I just work with the diet and the dimensional work. The meditation I don't do anymore, because when you get into these higher dimensions and you can plug in, then you don't need to continue with the meditation. But I do lots of physical exercise. I do lots of swimming in water, because water is very grounding at this time with this intense energy coming through.
Mm-hmm. So what do you feel is within your own future? Like what do you foresee for yourself in the future? Like, obviously you're trying to maintain this healthy balance within your life through your diet and through your exercise. What benefits do you feel that will help you? How do you feel help you in the coming within the next coming years?
Well, for me, over the next year, I see my body totally transmuting into a different form. So I'm no longer going to exist in this 3D reality. And so the purpose of all this process is to accelerate the ascension of the light body. So 6 months to 12 months' time, I see myself leaving this 3D dimension. So I'm not going to die as such, but I'm going to transmute and transcend and go to a different dimension.
So we want you to do that on air with us. Let us know a couple days before that happens, and we will do a special edition. And maybe you can take your mic with you to this dimension, and you can let us know what's on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing, because I was just going to say, like, I think it's important to sort of play the skeptical and the critic and even the devil's advocate sometimes. But like Free Spirit, presuming this doesn't happen, so to speak, is a part of yourself willing to accept and prepare for the idea that yourself and others may very well still physically be here for the next decades, indefinitely?
I could accept that if that is the case, but the thing is, when you engage with this ascension process, you can actually see these other dimensions, these star beings, these other intelligences, and it's very obvious that there's another dimension there awaiting for us. And the more you open up and understand, the more you can see, and then it becomes obvious that you have to open up with your consciousness before these realities become comprehensible to you.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, Michael, did you just...
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What are some changes that you've had? How long have you been in your process of engaging the ascension work that you've been doing, Free Spirit?
3 years right now. Yeah.
What major changes have you seen over those 3 years for yourself, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and otherwise?
Well, emotionally, I'm living in a place of happiness, abundance, joy, so I don't have any suffering in my life. I've resolved relationship issues, control dramas, so there's no kind of unpleasantness in my life. Physically, I'm totally well in my body. My body's healthy, I don't get sick, and my energy is very high. And spiritually, I can jump into other dimensions all the time through these stargates. So I'm continuously traveling in different dimensions across the universe, going to different galaxies, visiting different star systems, and having profound visionary experiences of these other planes. And that's accelerating on a day-by-day basis.
Now that's one thing that I would like to get into more detail about, because I sort of see your point of view as being one of an explorer, one who has ventured into other places that many of us haven't fully experienced yet, or in some cases we have within memories that we have, like sort of between lives or even in past lives. But in this physical life that we're in right now, many of us are not familiar with that. So how can you help our listeners understand, explain to them these ideas of the higher dimensions and the star beings and your ability to travel and see these other galaxies, as you say?
Well, these higher dimensional planes are non-physical planes beyond the physical body. And as you start lifting the energetic frequency of your physical body, you can start to perceive alternate dimensions that are usually hidden to you. And these alternate dimensions are throughout the entire universe, and they have more reality than this one. And the ascension process is about switching conscious dimension and becoming an immortal in one of these other spheres of being.
Mm-hmm. And what about what you refer to as the star beings? Like, that's not just a single group of entities. Is that sort of the term that you use to explain like the collective of entities that exist beyond the dimension that we're familiar with?
Yes, basically with the star beings, there's thousands of different collectives of immortal, advanced star beings, and I've probably come across several thousand different planets. Each of these planets has a huge collective of star beings, but these star beings, they do not have physical bodies like us. They've already ascended and they're living as immortals, and because of that they have profound power and wisdom. There's much that we can learn from them when we up our frequency.
So what is there that we can learn from them now, like on the frequency that we're on? What messages do they have for us?
The biggest message the star beings have is a warning about this dimension. Things are going to come to a head in this dimension. There's like 6-7 billion human beings on this planet right now, and the environmental and economic structures are on the verge of collapse. And the star beings keep telling me that there's going to be a huge reduction in human population on this planet, because everything's going to crumble of the old world, and this planet isn't going to be able to support so many human beings. And thus the Ascension is about continuing our existence in another plane. There's a way out of this population crisis.
Michael, what are your thoughts?
Can you tell us a little bit more about the star beings and how? Because not everyone just jumped right into ascension and ascension processes. What initiated you into making these changes? Was there an event that happened within your life, or was there a visitation that happened? What initiated your connection to all this work?
For me, it was the very powerful vibration of their love. The first time these beings came to me, because they came to me first in the dream time before I got more aligned, and the biggest thing that moved me was their love. It's a totally different vibration than the love on this world. And when you've experienced that love just one time, you are transformed forever, and you cannot help to continue to transform and evolve.
So are these beings that anyone can come into contact with, or do they reach out to us?
Basically, they have a love for every single human being, but because they're existing on a higher dimension, each human has to up their vibration. They have to do some cleansing and the opening of the heart so they can receive more love. And only when you reach a certain vibration is it possible to interact with these beings. Otherwise, there's this huge dimensional and conscious rift in between.
Mm-hmm. I think a good analogy for that for those who are listening, because this is something that I'm kind of using analogies that I've heard to describe the idea of channeling. But I mean, in that sense, in order for this communication to take place, there has to be a tuning of frequencies that occurs from both parties. So even though the star beings, so to speak, may be like putting out this signal to us, they may be doing it constantly, but it's up to us as a part of the receiver of that signal to be able to tune our frequencies, to be able to match theirs in order to be able to receive that message to begin with. And tuning that frequency, so to speak, is, as Free Spirit is saying, it involves diet, it involves like healthier choices, it involves like meditation in many ways. And I just think like that would be a simpler way of explaining it, like just simple metaphor, tuning our frequencies. Is this something that you would agree with, Free Spirit?
Yes, I'd agree with that. It's a very good analogy for seeing the situation.
Mm-hmm. So, with the star beings, now we often hear the idea of there being like the Pleiadians and the Andromedans and all. I mean, I'm honestly not able to like recount all of them, but I know there are a lot of people who are really into this, and the idea of even like referring to themselves as star seeds and having their roots in connection to these other star races. Now, are these sort of depiction of like the Pleiadians and stuff like that, are they in any way like third dimensional, or are they all fifth dimensional? Like, is there like where do you see the Pleiadians as an example?
For me, I see the Pleiadians as typical fifth dimensional star beings. I do not believe there are other third dimensional star beings in this reality, simply because of the huge distances between stars. It's not possible for another 3D race of beings to make it across the interstellar voids. So all of these other beings are fifth dimensional and above.
Now, that doesn't mean that there can't actually be like third dimensional races of similar humanoid creatures out there in other parts of the galaxy. Is that right to presume?
There are many different planets with 3D humanoid races, but because of the huge distances between these stars, it's just impossible for those races to make contact, but they definitely are there.
Now, that's a really interesting thing to think that in the same way of what's happening here on Earth as we're evolving and we're going through all this, to think of Earth as a school for ascension, the idea that there are other schools in other parts of the universe, in the galaxies and all this collective reality, where other third-dimensional planets are going through their own cycle, their own learning process, and who knows, like what that may sort of be. But I would imagine that what is happening here on Earth definitely has the attention of all the star beings in some way or another. Because now this is something I sort of heard, because even though we're in third dimension, doesn't mean we're any less important than those who are in fifth dimension. Because if anything, what is happening here in the sense of the macro and the micro, and as is above, so below, what is happening on this third dimensional existence here on Earth is going to affect the rest of the galaxy in some way. It's going to create like that impact and that ripple. Is this right to presume, Free Spirit?
I believe the events on this planet will have some effect. I'm not sure it will totally go out to the entire galaxy, but if the vibration of this planet doesn't ascend as planned, then the quantum frequencies of the solar system and the surrounding stars is affected, and that will have repercussions on other systems elsewhere. So yeah, there is some truth in that.
Okay, so sorry, Michael, did you have something?
No.
Okay, well, yeah, like I'm just I like this whole idea of ascension and stuff like that. The idea of moving from third dimension to fifth dimension, because like that's just something that for me it still baffles my mind, because like until it sort of happens in front of me, it's sort of something that I'm kind of, I can't just say like I believe it. But if I were to experience it and go through it myself, then obviously I can say I can believe it because I've had my own experience of it. But like right now, again, I just sort of want to help our audience sort of get a better idea, like how can they help in this whole idea of helping the collective of Earth as a whole succeed in this ascension process. And in your mind, like, is there some sort of timeline for when this needs to take place?
I see the timeline for this process is actually very short. In the next 6 to 9 months, there's going to be some major crisis on this planet, economically and environmentally. And, you see all of these climatic disturbances are accelerating. So the timeline is actually very short for people to awaken to their higher dimensional nature if they choose and embrace this ascension. And the key to this is getting past the mind and the ego, because the mind and the ego continually wishes to understand, but these other realities are understood when you let go of that rational mind and you move past your ordinary conceptions and perceptions about reality.
One of the things that I would like to hear from you is, because I see on your website too that you also do one-on-one sessions and you do ascension training. So for someone who is brand new to this, what would be the first step you'd recommend them taking to engage the process of ascension?
Well, the first thing I do is look at their body and make sure they're not being poisoned by any heavy-duty pineal toxins. And then I start to work with them emotionally, see where their fears are and see if they have anything they need to forgive. And only once those two things are well underway do I then introduce the deeper spiritual aspects to things, because those spiritual things cannot be understood if the pineal gland is closed because of the poisons, or the heart is contracted because of a lot of emotional suffering.
Mm-hmm. I think for our listeners, one thing that you can definitely start doing in your life, if you haven't already, in terms of diet, because what we're saying here, diet is sort of one of the most important things. Like you can try and reach ascension or what have you, or do all this meditation, but if you're not paying attention to your diet, then you're really you're like just putting these hurdles in front of you. So stop ingesting anything like the pops, any of the sodas and everything like that. Like that is pure acidic, and that's definitely going to not help your body in any way. And like any of that sugar is just not something that your body needs by any means. So stop drinking pop right away, and that will definitely help you towards moving towards this whole self-awareness process. Because I mean, you shouldn't think that like your goal is ascension. Like no. Your goal in all this is simply like self-awareness and that development of consciousness. The idea of being more aware of the fact that you're aware, so to speak. So.
And the destination is the road most oftentimes. Remember the idea, and I do like the concept of physical ascension. The idea that we can transmute this very tangible energetic body, because we're all made of energy on some level, into a new state of being. And we do that when you start making changes like dietary changes, physical changes. You'll actually see the body begin to improve itself. And remember, ascension just isn't going into a transdimensional state, moving from this state into another dimensional place of being, another non-tangible reality. We can create positive change within this space. We can transcend who we currently are and enter into a new place of being. When you feel healthier, you enter into a new state of you, which is another way to ascend while you're still in this tangible reality. So making those dietary changes, engaging practices like yoga, qigong, parkour, things that engage the mind, body, spirit connection, allowing yourself to expand, not giving power away to things like soda, the internet, things that are outside of you. Going internal as much as possible allows us to really become part of the process. And then if the energies align and we are able to make that transmutation from physical into non-physical form, then great. But if not, at this moment, at least you're making so many positive changes that you drive yourself into a new state of you, which is also a very important process. So in this year especially, being that it is 2012, we're seeing a lot of new energies coming in, lots of chaos, but lots of also very positive things. What are your thoughts on all of the 2012, some of the Mayan prophecies and those kinds of things, Free Spirit?
Well, the Mayan prophecies point to the central galactic alignment with our own sun, and this basically points to the beginning of the next ascension cycle. And what we're going to see is a mixture of ascension and chaos at the same time, because a lot of the structures on this planet have been built up upon fear, and the age of fear and control is coming to an end. So we're seeing the political upheavals, the uprisings, and people on this planet want big change. And this process, this 2012 process, it's about moving from fear into a more loving vibration of consciousness. And that's what the Mayans actually foresaw, this huge spiritual transformation within humanity.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I was just going to add, because I think we should very shortly set our intention for the meditation that we're about to do within the next couple of minutes. But a simple sort of, not even metaphor, but the way to understand like this whole cycle of what we're going through right now. And correct me if you have like sort of your own input on it. But I think like the Kali Yuga cycle or whatever, the Yuga cycles. Like those in themselves, like in the same way that a Mayan temple sort of starts big from the base and gets smaller and smaller and smaller, like that fraction between the sides at the bottom to the sides of the top also represents the representation of time itself in terms of cycles that we as a human race and the planet are going through, and this idea of coming into awareness and falling out of awareness. So in the past, where it would have taken a process of like a couple thousand years of like coming into awareness and falling out of awareness, where we are now, like within our cycle as we reach like this eschaton of 2012, is we are coming into awareness within like the quickest amount of time that's like ever happened before on this planet.
That's correct, yes. And it's also possible for people to transform very quickly at this time because of these accelerated energies. So what took me several years to clear, other people could clear in a matter of days.
Now that's the part that's really interesting, and that's something that I've been feeling for a while, this idea that these energies, 2012 is not like a light switch event. Like, these energies are accelerating, and in the sense that synchronicities are going to become more common in people's everyday life, and also that these energies are going to be more accessible. So that's where things like the paradigm shift communities are so important, because as more people learn, it's like this 100 monkey effect, where there's like this critical mass point where the people who are new to this stuff are going to be able to get it within a much quicker and shorter amount of time. So that is just really encouraging to say, like, don't give up. Like, right now, like, we have all the tools we need to really like make things accelerate, even within like the timeline that we have between like now and the end of 2012. Like, within that, like, that only is like a few months, but to me at least, a few months is like a lot of time to actually get things done, considering how much is happening just on a weekly basis in my life personally and in other people's lives.
Yeah, 2012 is important. It's a good date, and just think. I like to use it as an analogy of, if it is going to end, live your life completely and to the fullest, all the way up until that point. If it doesn't, just keep going. You know, eventually there is an end. You know, so if you're doing all that you can to live in the best place possible, to do the best for yourself and your community and those around you, that is enough. You know, allow yourself to start making those changes, and we'll start with our meditation tonight. Like that segue?
That was a good segue. All right. Now, Free Spirit, what intentions do you feel that we should set with our group meditation here?
I'd recommend today that people come into their hearts and open themselves up to a deeper love and forgiveness, self-acceptance and acceptance of others. So there's this deep transformation of the heart, cultivating more love and kindness towards self and others.
All right, Michael, anything else you want to add to that? Or?
Yeah, just really heart-centered living. I like that Free Spirit does talk a lot about the heart-centered stuff. You hear a lot of folks who go beyond that, but just going into the heart, allow yourselves to mentally drop down into your heart space, have the intention to create positive change for yourself, and let that radiate to all those within your experience.
All right, so that's going to be our focus for this meditation for all of those who are listening. Not only mentally do you want to just sort of like let your mind go where it needs to, but consciously focus on your heart. Become more aware of the beat of the heart in itself and be able to connect with that vibration that is resonating. So I think at this point, are we ready to get started? Because I was just going to say, everybody who's listening, get yourselves comfortable, and we, the hosts, are going to do the same here as we transition from this Psychic Saturday into the next day, which will be Sunday, which is going to be equally as exciting, because it's pretty cool to be able to do a show that transitions from one day to the next. That's just
absolutely.
I like that. and to also think that, like, as a Saturday, like in the terms of the 7 days of the week, sort of relates to the 7 chakras. So with Monday being like the moon material day, Saturday would be, we're currently at our brow chakra and moving into our crown, which is Sunday, and that reconnection with higher self and divine. So let's move towards that.
Absolutely. So go ahead and introduce the frequency we're about to listen to.
Well, this is basically 369 hertz frequency, so it's part of a Solfeggio harmonic. So it's part of a sacred resonance that definitely is going to be able to unlock some parts of ourselves and take part in the DNA healing aspect of what we need to get done. So allow it to happen.
All right, so go ahead and I'll lead us right into it. Then as soon as the time clicks over on my clock here, I'll cue up the music. So everyone begins centering deeply within the breath, taking those deep inhales, allowing the exhale to create space for any energy to move into your experience. Allow yourself to unbind from any limitations. Steady in on that breath. Each deep inhale, bringing in community, bringing in compassion, bringing in love. Exhale, creating space within the heart center for anything you need within this experience. Opening up the third eye, the crown, aligning the entire body with all things physical and non-physical. Continue tuning into the breath, allowing yourself to go a little deeper within. All sounds taking you deeper into a place of being, into a place of high resonance with all parts of the body, both physical and non-physical. Continue breathing deeply as we now begin our meditation. Inhale, and now exhale. slowly begin to allow yourself to return to consciousness, inhaling and exhaling deeply as you come back in the full alignment with your space, entering back in to your reality, opening back up to your experience fully. Deep breath in, deep exhale. Welcome back. Skull, you there? I think Skull ascended.
Can you still hear me?
Exactly.
Guys, I've ascended. I'm in the fifth dimension.
All right, welcome back. That was some good. I mean, and there's so folks, you can look up Solfeggio frequencies.
Oh, hold on, we're sounding a little robot-y right now. Test.
I'm fine.
You sound kind of weird, but okay. No, or maybe it's just me. Things sound different when you're in the fifth dimension. It's all like verbally and stuff. So yeah,
that's how we, Hopefully, if we lost anyone in the chat room and you're still able to chat from the other dimensions, let us know. Because I think that's an important thing. Because
Mike, or at least to me, your sound is still very off. Like I don't want to stop you, but it's hard to
reload your page.
There we go. Oh, okay.
Sometimes everyone, and this is for everyone out there in the room too, because especially when we start doing high energy stuff like the meditations we have high energy guests on. If you ever notice and your chat isn't working or you lose the show, do a quick refresh on the show, and sometimes that'll bring things back into alignment. So we do have some questions coming in from the chat. We do have some questions that were emailed in. So we'll get to those in a bit here. Anything else you want to bring up in conversation, Skull?
Well, I guess one thing I would be curious, Free Spirit, were you taking part in that meditation?
I was taking part, yes.
Yes. So what was your experience during that meditation?
For me, I was looking out of the window because the sun has just risen here in Switzerland, and I was just observing the river because I live very close to a river. So I was just observing the rhythm of life and energy just moving through my being, and I was feeling a very profound vibration of deep love and healing from source.
Mm-hmm. And if anybody else had any particular experience with that meditation, feel free to let us know. I guess for me, I was trying to stay focused on my heart because for me, like, part of the reason when I approach meditation, it's fun to let your mind wander, but at the same time to have something to focus on is part of that practice that's actually going to help strengthen the brain in a little bit of a different way, whereas if you're just letting it wander, you're sort of experiencing and exploring parts of your mind, which is important, but if you're concentrating on the focus, then it's almost like developing it sort of like in a way that you would train a muscle, and that's just going to help you maintain concentration once you sort of get to states where you might be experiencing very fifth-dimensional things, whether it be in similar states within your dreams or in deeper states of meditation. Focus is always something that you want to have in your practice. So, and Michael, what about you?
When I do heart-centered meditations, I actually like to touch the heart center itself to feel the natural rhythm of the heartbeat, to feel it anchoring into the cycles of the Earth's core. So for me, it becomes a very tangible experience, and I try to focus on my exhales during meditations because that creates a little bit of space to allow some of that deep connection to happen. So those of you out there who are in the chat, if you have experiences, share those experiences with another. I want the chat to be as interactive as possible. If you have questions tonight for Free Spirit on Ascension, the star beings, or anything that you have in relation to the show topic tonight, call us, 347-326-9263. We have a lot of folks in the queue tonight. Also, you can post your questions in the chat room. You can just private message myself or Skull, and we'll get you onto the show here. So yeah, that was really good. That was a really great intention. We need to do more heart-centered type of activities. Is there something that you can give to our listeners, Free Spirit, that can be like a daily practice for them to do more heart-centered living?
Yes, it's basically about breathing into your heart center. When you wake up in the morning, just breathe really deeply into your being and fill your heart center with warmth and love and light, and then just go about your day from that place. And if you feel any kind of contraction, just go back into that, making the connection to the heart center.
All right. Well, are we ready to move into the questions then, Michael?
Yeah. So let's go a little quick here. Little discussion here on the question. So, folks, if we take your call via telephone, we do have just a couple that are in the queue right now. Be sure you come in, very clear with what the question is that you have for Free Spirit, and we'll keep you on so that we can facilitate a discussion depending on what your question is. If there's questions in the chat, I do have a couple email questions that I'll be reading on air. Feel free to post your questions in the chat. Do call in 347-326-9263. This is a great opportunity to connect with someone who is really doing the work, someone who's out there with just coming in with a wealth of knowledge. When we get to the last 5 minutes of the show, just so that we don't go over and lose the live stream, you'll hear a chime.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'll turn it down a little bit. So it won't be that loud, but you'll hear a small chime instead of the usual chimes we usually do for the show. There'll be a little chime, and hopefully that may have offended a few of you just now. So the chime will be a lesson, but it lets us know that we're coming to end the show, so that way we don't have to verbally cut you off, because we want to be sure we have enough time to wrap up and to say goodbye to our guests for joining us. So I'm going to read this first question that came in through the email from DMT Theory. The question reads, I had a recent DMT experience where I went into a dimension I can only describe as a love garden. There were many small star beings there, very happy to see me. They showed me what the frequency of pure love feels like. An intense frequency of love was radiating everywhere. I had a strong feeling that many of us come from this place, that we are them. What are some of your thoughts on this? In your experiences, have you ever visited anything similar to a garden of pure love, Free Spirit?
Yes, I've had these experiences all the time, and interestingly enough, last night as the solar flare, so I felt I had to go and jump in a river just for grounding, and when I jumped in the river and I went underwater, I suddenly crossed over into a different dimension, and there's this Garden of Eden. There are all these loving beings there, the angelic beings, and all these profoundly beautiful plants and flowers. And then when I emerged from the water, I was back here again. So yes, I've had these experiences, and I have them often.
Now, the experience that DMT Theory is referring to is one of a DMT experience. Now, I presume when he says he did DMT, I'm presuming he meant that he would have smoked it, opposed to using the ayahuasca brew. But Free Spirit, you do have your own experience with the ayahuasca brew. Maybe you can give us a little bit more detail on that and how that opened you up to some of these energies and even the chance to communicate with some of these other entities. Because I think for people who may not be familiar with ayahuasca is a vine native to the Amazon, and the chemical within it, dimethyltryptamine, is the chemical that's produced naturally in the brain when we're in states of birth and death, and also when we dream, and also within states of deeper meditation. So it's definitely something where it is, to go back a step, it's produced by the pineal gland in theory, but presuming it is, it definitely sort of connects all these dots with this idea that the pineal gland and the release of DMT and the experiences of ayahuasca and DMT are opening up the stargate of the pineal gland so that we can communicate with the energies of the higher dimensions. So again, my question is, what have your experiences been with ayahuasca, and have you and how was it communicating with these entities in these experiences?
My personal experience with ayahuasca was it enabled me to confront my fears and heal these conflicts within myself. And once I had this love healing, then the ayahuasca opened me up to the higher dimensions and showed me what is possible, and I had some of these experiences with the beings. But in the end, you can get your own pineal gland to make its own DMT, and when that happens, the experience is far more powerful than the ayahuasca, and it's more grounded in your experience. And the ayahuasca can help a lot of people to start to open up these gateways into this different consciousness, to get people past the limitations of the ego and the rational mind. The ayahuasca enables you to let go into the love of the universe and start to experience what's actually out there.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely a use for these spiritual medicines, as I commonly refer to them as, and it is one essentially of healing when used in the right context and with the right mindset. And that goes for any of them, including like mushrooms. Now, I don't necessarily want to just say LSD, because personally, there's like a synthetic nature of that I'm not too particularly fond of. Like I would advocate mushrooms over LSD any day, but of course I don't advocate any because they're both illegal, of course, in theory. But I do agree that these experiences are there for people who maybe have these doubts about these other dimensional energies and these dimensional experiences. You know, say someone, they just know it in their heart that this stuff is real, but they're not at that level within their own life where they're reaching those deeper states within their own meditation, and they want to be able to experience these other dimensional energies for themselves. And that's where something like ayahuasca is definitely a valuable tool for within this human experience. I agree. So it's interesting that you said you started this sort of path of yours. Did you say it was only within like the last 3 or 4 years that you really sort of progressed on your path in this direction?
Well, I've been on the spiritual path for about 20 years, but it's just the last 3 years in terms of the multi-dimensional ascension aspect to it.
Right. And what sort of set that off within the beginning of those 3 years? What sort of opened you up in that multidimensional direction?
For me, it was a combination of the ayahuasca and healing my relationship. So I was able to come into a deeper vibration of love. And yeah, for me, the ayahuasca ceremonies really opened things up for me and showed me these different realities.
And the idea that there are actually entities within these realities who
yes, definitely. Like the first time I had the ayahuasca, within minutes I saw the first entity, and it came through straight away with the messages it had for me.
And is that something that stayed with you? Like, do you know which messages it was communicating?
Basically, after that, they kept coming back again and again, and that was when these beings said that I needed to start writing books, I needed to start making videos, I needed to start sharing with other people about these experiences. And that was when I left my previous job working with old people in a care home and take up this work instead.
So also just talking on the use of any type of psychedelic element to attain this connection into these transdimensional states. For those of you out there, just understand that that's not the only way to gain access to these beings and these things that are outside of us. They are one avenue of connection, and you'll see even globally we'll go through these cycles. In the 70s and the 60s we had the LSD and different things that were taking people into these psychoactive experiments with connection into worlds beyond us. And even you can look into like some of the rave scenes, the burner scenes, where people were connecting into these elements. And Ram Dass, in one of his talks, really talks about it, in that we want to be sure that we're using intention when we're going into those spaces of connecting into those, outer realms, to go into those places meditative state. So, when you are out there using methods to connect into those connective spaces, be sure you're doing it in a grounded way that allows you to have a deeply connected experience. And, it's fun and it's powerful to go into those spaces, but, our karma, as Ram Dass says, isn't to stay in those spaces. It's to get that knowledge, to come back and to do something with it, like what Free Spirit's done here. And I really, think it's great that you've actually taken the stuff that you've gotten and have transitioned it into a very direct process that others can connect into. But, it just seems like, you are really engaged in the work. What do you recommend for grounding? I have imagined that grounding for you is an important part of your process with how much energy you're constantly harnessing.
Definitely, grounding is very important, and for me, water seems to be crucial. Like every day I need to get in like a big body of water, like a river or a lake. And at the same time, grounding is about being around the right kind of relationships, the right kind of people, making sure there's no conflicts to pull me off center, and just making sure that I have a good environment around me conducive to channeling this energy. So a lot of safety, a lot of love, plenty of material grounding, and time in nature as well, going out into the forest, the rivers, the mountains, all that's really necessary. Like grounding in a city must be intensely hard work.
So have you come into contact, because we do know that there is the existence of the lower dimensional energies that, we'd either call them demons or negative thought forms. Have you come in your travels into these other dimensional spaces, have you come across anything that would be perceived as negative?
I've come across some individuals that claim to channel a high source, and instead they're just tapped into the lower astral. I mean, I haven't had much experience myself with these hell realms and demons, but these realms are out there, but they're a creation of your own mind. If you don't confront your fears and transform them to love, then you lose energy. And when you lose energy, these lower astral thought forms can stick on you and cause unpleasant and frightening experiences. But, if you keep your energy up strong, it's not really an issue.
Now, one thing that I did see brought up in the chat that I did just want to mention, again, sort of in terms of people saying, how do I reach these states of, okay, we've talked about diet, we've talked about meditation, even the idea of, if you want to explore your dreams, start with things like writing down your dreams, yoga, breath work, self-observation of the mind, these little things. One thing that I just wanted to suggest as another tip, and this is something that if we want to get into a conversation about it further, that's fine, but I was just going to say, for everyone, be conscious of, for the males more specifically, in terms of the seminal fluid that we have in our body, that's something that is very potent energy-wise, and something that can be transmutated, in an alchemy sense, into other energy that we can use within our spiritual practices. So I know a lot of people, maybe younger males and everything, they sort of have this habit of spilling their seed fairly regularly, and I'm trying to keep this as clean as possible in terms of the language that I use. So be more aware of your habits, and if you conserve that seed, literally it is a seed because it has the potential to grow into greater energy, and it accumulates, and that's something that is definitely going to unfold into your entire life, in terms of your meditation, in terms of your ability to be able to get more out of your practice, and even attune yourself to these higher vibrational realities. And this goes in line with even activating your kundalini and getting your chakras actually moving, because a lot of us, our chakras are really not geared up and moving the way that they potentially could. But once you sort of have an experience where it really is moving, you'll know, and you can't essentially get there if you're not conserving your seed. It's just something that I've learned and experienced.
Well, it's all part of the tantric process also. In Tantra, it's a very tangible, very physical experience with the energy. And it's, there are ways to engage the actual physical body in that process of doing ascension work and, engaging in self-controlled activity where you are engaging the body's sexual organs, when you're engaging the root chakra, kundalini shakti, having those ascension things happen within the physical body, rising kundalini, breath of fire, these different exercises that actually bring you into the physical body for the process of elevating that energy up through the chakric field. Those are ways that you can control that. But the idea is, too, with anything else, when we engage blissful experience, an orgasm is a blissful experience. It's a direct connection into that higher vibrational energy. It's a bliss state. So, there are some drugs that will actually take you directly into bliss state. And one of my teachers described it like LSD, for instance, is one of those synthetic compounds that takes us directly from this dimension and breaks us through into those fifth dimensional states. And it can be dangerous, even with engaging orgasmic energy, to attain those energies and not have the understanding of what we're engaging. And you see a lot of people who will pursue the physical body, they'll pursue these avenues because we're seeking bliss, we're seeking connection. So, when you're using it in a more controlled way to engage physical, spiritual experience, it makes it more purposeful. So, have purpose in the things that you're doing, even if it's just by yourself, So we do have a question in the chat here, and it's kind of scrolled up. So those of you out there who are posting questions in the chat, be sure that you send them to us in your text. Okay, so Free Spirit, this is coming from Golden Dawn, and the question is regarding implantation being done by ETs to humans, although not physically, but unconscious abductions. Why are they, Palladians, etc., implanting devices in the brains of us, and for what purpose?
I haven't had any personal experience of this implantation, but I believe what's actually happening is people getting afraid when they're ascending into the dimensions of these beings, and their fear is creating a lot of resistance, and the fear is being projected outwards and distorting what's actually happening. So people feel they're being abducted or manipulated, but really you've just spiked and found yourself in that dimension. And, if you come back into love space, I don't believe you can actually be harmed there. And I don't believe that, for myself, that people's brains are being implanted.
So what about the idea of physical ETs to begin with? We often do have these depictions of the Greys and so forth. In your mind, are these? Is there a reality to these physical aliens in any way?
I believe what happens is occasionally aliens start to de-ascend out of the fifth dimension, and these Greys are in essence a dying race, and they're falling back through the dimensions, and so some of them are starting to appear in our planes in a place of fear and desperation. So I believe that does happen on a small scale.
And what about the idea of UFO sightings? Because obviously that's something that's coming more common, it seems. With each passing month, it seems there's an increased rise on the amount of sightings that we're having. What's your take on UFO sightings?
My take is the star beings, the multi-dimensional beings, they have ships made out of light and higher dimensional matter. So I believe a lot of the UFOs is around military manipulation and experimentation, and there may actually be a staged alien invasion involving the military to make out some aliens have arrived, but that's likely to be a deception. They're not going to be real aliens.
Now that's something that since it's been brought up, I definitely want to get into more detail about that, because that's something that a lot of people have been talking about, this idea of a staged alien invasion and how it would play out, and the reasons for it playing out in the first place. And essentially, if it were to happen, it would be through the controlling governments or whatever, in some way orchestrating it, and it would be a control mechanism or a false flag attack in a lot of ways. So do you feel that, do you have any predictions on whether or not anything is going to be happening with the upcoming Olympics? Because obviously the Olympics 2012 only happens once, and we are in the year 2012 and it's the Olympics. It just seems like a prime ground for something to happen, whether it's a staged alien invasion or not. What do you think is going to happen?
I don't believe personally anything is going to happen, but if it does, then people just need to have their discernment around them. It's possible the powers that be might want to stage some kind of attack because they're needing a pretext for a war, like a war with Iran because of the nuclear issue. I don't strongly believe there's going to be a staged alien invasion at this time, but if it does happen, what people need to bear in mind is that the real aliens don't have the nuts and bolts shit, so to speak.
Yeah, your mic is it did it last time, right about the same time in the show. So
I think it's actually happening all of it. I think it's got to be those blasted solar materials. Yeah.
Probably is. Like maybe we're just rotating around. So maybe you want to unplug it and plug it back in. Maybe.
Oh, that sounds better. Yeah.
Yes, it's it's one of those things with technology and bringing all this high energy into a space. So, can you tell us a little bit about how the solar flares affect us? For some of them who may not know, how this energy affects us physically, Free Spirit, what are some things that people should be observing within their space?
Well, the solar flares, what they do is they channel higher dimensional energy and frequency into the physical body. So I saw this very clearly last night. I saw the energies of the flares coming down and going straight to my body. And if you imagine when you throw a stone into water, it ripples outwards. It's similar to that. The flare goes into your energy field and it creates a ripple, and what this flare is actually doing is it's transmuting the matter into your body into a different quantum state. So these flares are actually facilitating ascensions, and the flares are going into people's bodies and bringing up the blockages, bringing up the densities and the negative feelings so that people can heal them and release them so they can come into a higher vibration of light.
Mm-hmm. Now that's something that I've been interested in, the idea that these solar flares, the way that they're happening, they are coinciding with this cycle that we're a part of, and the idea that people know this, like radiation has the ability to change like molecular structure of like bodies of organisms. But radiation now, like there is radiation coming off like within these solar flares, I would imagine, but radiation isn't necessarily this totally wrong thing, because radiation technically what it has the chance to do is to like get rid of like the slightly unhealthy parts of the cells or whatever, and in order to replace them and create space for the new healthier parts to come into being, and it's almost like a purging that is occurring. Is that correct in that understanding with the solar flares?
Yes, and it's a different kind of radiation. It's not like the standard nuclear radiation that people would have in mind. It's an intergalactic cosmic bombardment of different multidimensional frequencies, and that energy is going into people's DNA, and it's awakening what science calls junk DNA. And when this junk DNA is activated, that's when the blueprint for the light being comes online, you start to access these different dimensions. You have the visionary experiences, you can remember your past lives, and ultimately these flares are going to enable people to teleport their bodies and become immortal. These solar flares can turn you into an immortal being of light and totally purge the physical aspect of your being away from you.
So one other more quick question for you, Free Spirit, because we talk about moving from this dimension into those other spaces, but do you also feel that by going into those extra dimensional realms that we can also try to recreate some of that here within this tangible reality? Do you feel like it's something that is possible, even though we are moving into these places where we are overusing our resources, we are, population is increasing at a phenomenal rate? Do you feel that it is possible within this experience to create something similar to what you may have seen on your travels into those extra dimensional places?
I feel what you do is when you go into these other dimensions, you pick up the energy, you come back here and you integrate it into your being to lift yourself out of this dimension. The third dimension in itself cannot be healed by these higher dimensional energies, because the third dimension is simply an illusion and a limitation. But what you can do is bring that energy back, embody more love and joy and understanding, and then start to up your frequency. But in the end, you have to let go of this third dimension. There is no future here in this plane. So the transformation is like a vehicle for getting to the next sphere of consciousness.
Now that's not to... I mean, a lot of people, they sort of might hear something like that, and in some ways, whether they're consciously admitting it or not, that may sort of scare them, the idea that, like how much of a future is there in this third dimension, in the sense of where we're going. Now, for me personally, I guess it's part of my association with my root chakra. Some people have more a connection to different chakras than others. I feel fairly connected with the root chakra, meaning that I feel that a lot of my work that I'm here to do is based in the physical. So for me, I'm totally willing to accept this idea of ascension, but I'm totally willing to accept the very real possibility that I'm going to still be here in this physical third dimension for quite some time. I sort of said to myself, oh, okay, I'll stick around to 2020, and then maybe I'll see where I'm at, and maybe I'll decide to ascend at that point, if it's actually some sort of option that I can opt into or whatever. But I think for a lot of people, be considerate of this idea that maybe there will be some people who quite literally will, quote unquote, ascend. But it doesn't have to happen to everyone within this next, within the end of this year. Again, it's not something to be feared, because in a lot of ways, this just means that for many of us, we'll be opening up to these new energies, so that come 2013, come 2014, and so forth, we'll have these new abilities that coincide with the aspect of solar flares unlocking parts of our DNA, so that we'll be more capable of building the tribe here in the physical to help create more of a sustainable future here in the third dimension. It's just one way I see it. I think if we can tap into the abilities that are unlocked through this ascension training process, such as elements of telepathy, or even being able to become more of our authentic self, then it's definitely something that is yet to be explored, and something that is equally as exciting as ascension, in my opinion.
So, Free Spirit, I have a quick question for you now because you said, we move from this state into another place of being, and our goal is to do the ascension. So what are your views on reincarnation, those beings who return into this space? What is their purpose then for coming back into this reality if our purpose is to move into fifth dimensional energy?
Well, for some people, they've chosen not to ascend at this time because they need to have more karmic experiences in the third dimension. So what's going to happen over the coming years is the people that do not choose the path of ascension are simply going to reincarnate on one of these other 3D worlds in the universe, and they can continue to have 3D experiences there. And what's happening with the Earth itself is transmuting because of the solar flares, and this planet is going to become a fifth dimensional planet. So it's not going to be possible to have three-dimensional experiences here. So the reincarnation is simply a way of changing sphere and appearing elsewhere to have more 3D experiences. And when you ascend, you come out of that wheel of birth and death. So there's two options for people at this time as to where they want to go spiritually, whether they want to have more incarnations in the 3D, or whether they want to wrap it all up and have this ascension experience.
So how do you feel about some of the religious filters that have been placed on the ascension process? Because there's a lot of different ways that folks will engage the idea of ascension, whereas the Buddhist will try to disengage themselves from the wheel of life through actions of engaging suffering. The Christians engage it through the process of trying to become more, some of them try to become more Christ-like. And, the Christ story in itself is a description of physical ascension. And there have been those who've used the book of Revelations. There's a book called Revelations of St. John, where the author actually takes the Revelations and breaks it down as an ascension process. What are your thoughts on some of the religious filters that have been placed on the ascension process?
I feel the core messages in the religions are actually true, but on top of that, there's a lot of dogma and fear, and there's this fear of God that really gets in the way and messes with people's processes. People are afraid of this external God because if they don't comply with what this being wants, they're going to go to hell forever and ever. So I think a lot of this judgmental nonsense is really harmful, and people need to kind of push that aside and go much deeper. And, my own experience is redemption comes from within. I have the power to forgive myself and heal myself. I don't need to bargain with any external God and plead not to go to hell. This is just fear nonsense.
So, and we talk of, sometimes through the religious filters, you'll see it's more of an action of control within those spaces, because if we place something between the individual and the access to divine energy, then we're able to control folks and individuals through that manipulation of divine energy. And speaking of the God concept, source concept, what do you feel? Because, the idea of intelligent design, there is this beautiful design that makes everything work perfectly, not just within this space, but in those multiverses. What is your concept of source?
My concept of source is this complete awareness of the entire universe embodying all of this creation. And the more you explore the vibration of source and become acquainted to it, the more you find that this source is actually yourself. And there is this vibration of oneness, and all human beings in a higher dimension are unified and we're all part of the same experience. And we can all have this experience of source because this source is us. It cannot exist outside of ourselves. Like any philosophy, it says God exists externally. If you investigate that, that just cannot be true, because you only see things through the filter of your own consciousness. So it's difficult to understand how a God or a higher being can exist totally separate from our awareness, because there is no separation when you reflect on this.
Right.
I often think of one way of sort of how I make sense of the universe in terms of awareness, I sort of think there's like a hierarchy of consciousness, and where we are, we're kind of maybe in the middle. Say we're in the middle, and below us you get the idea of like mammals and even down into like plant life and essentially rocks. There's like still a vibration of consciousness through that, though very not the frequency isn't quite the same. But in the same way, as you go above us, there are these other entities, which would be sort of the star beings, and these beings, as they go up a hierarchy in consciousness, they sort of have more of an encapsulated understanding of what is below them, in the same way that we understand what's below us in terms of the mammals and the plants, but the fifth beings are aware of what's below them in the terms of our awareness, and then it sort of goes up a little bit higher, and even into the idea of a totality collective, which would be almost like an oversoul, is kind of a term used to describe it. And in that sense, that oversoul is like that one big orchestrated like awareness, which is what some people sort of refer to as like the God consciousness. So,
and it's this God consciousness, this over self, which can understand and integrate all of the other dimensions. And if you can go with your astral body and navigate up through the dimensions and get into 12th dimensional hyperspace, you can have this experience with finding source and this all-embracing consciousness.
Yeah, without a doubt, reality isn't... What's the exact quote? Reality isn't... Like, it's not as crazy as you can imagine. It's like crazier than you can imagine. Oh, I'm butchering it, but there's like I want to say it's like Leary or McKenna, but like the idea that we can't even imagine how like profoundly amazing this reality is. Like it's more amazing than when what we can even imagine, and in the same sense that like for someone who's like read about ayahuasca or even DMT, like until they actually experience or you know meditative states into the fifth dimension, until they actually experience it for themselves, like you just can't know. Like it's an experience that's attached with that awareness. But to think that it goes even more beyond that is the part that's just like so incredibly amazing in so many levels. So,
and another question for you, Free Spirit, is because you know I know you do a lot of work one-on-one with individuals, you know, and a lot of folks this year I've noticed within my work of doing spiritual counseling are engaging in an awakening process, either by choice or because the universe is aligning them with their higher vibrations. How do you recommend that those who come to you integrate engaging the ascension process but still living their mundane lives? Because until we reach that state of ascension, we still have to engage our physical reality. How do you recommend people to balance out engaging both the work and the reality they're currently in?
Well, people will find that as they embrace the vibrations of ascension, their physical reality will begin to change and their life circumstances will probably need to be re-evaluated. And when you commit to the process of ascension, there isn't this conflict between the ascension process and the mundane, because both of these aspects become integrated, because your physical life will change to support your ascension process. But you cannot do it the other way around. You cannot hold on to a mundane life with attachments and then work to ascend and then try and take that stuff with you. So people's jobs are going to change, relationships are going to transform, you may be called to move, all kinds of big things will happen on the material level to support you with your process. And that's what to help people to understand and go through. Nearly every person I work with goes through some massive change on the physical level in terms of work or money or home, something like that.
I think it's important to remember, and an analogy I like to use with a lot of my clients is that, you know, we go from, you know, middle school or primary school into a different school. It's kind of ascending. You're moving into one state into another state. We lose a lot of our friends, and sometimes even in those spaces, we don't even recognize each other anymore. and we try to hold on to who we were. We don't allow ourselves to align into this higher process, this higher state of being. And I feel we all came into this reality to do something with our time here. And it's almost as if now, within this year, for a lot of people, the universe has called in those contracts that we made prior to engaging in this physical reality. So those of you out there who are experiencing some of these changes, allow yourself to engage your process. Understand that things will change, things will fall away. But if you don't take the spoiled, expired food out of their refrigerator, you can't put new stuff in. You have to allow that old stuff to be thrown away so that the new stuff can come into your space. And cleansing isn't always a bad thing. Cleansing can be a very powerful process for us to move into those spaces. So we do have a quick question here from Zachary in the chat room, and he wants to know what your perspective is on eating meat.
My personal perspective on eating meat is that it's a very dense food, and when people up their vibrations, they'll find that their bodies are unable to handle it. So personally, I'd recommend that people move away from the eating meat. So first of all, it's about the density, the physical density of the food. But then you have the animal suffering element, right, and the issue of karma, like being tied up in a lot of animal suffering. And I found myself, when I stopped eating meat 20 years ago, that I developed a much deeper emotional sensitivity to nature, myself and others, that I didn't have when I was eating meat, because I was tied up in this karmic energy of suffering.
And it really does play into how we, as a society, I think Abraham Lincoln said that you can judge a character of a nation by how it treats its animals. And in a lot of aspects, we treat each other in a lot of the same ways we do treat those other beings that are not necessarily below us, but we are in stewardship too. So what are your thoughts also like on animals in the ascension process? What is their purpose within that space?
Animals, I believe, are playing a part to assist the earth in the ascension process. And I see that the animals are naturally going to ascend as they live more on instinct, so they're not creating negative karmas as such. They're just having their experience, and they're here to remind us of the diversity of the universe and to open up to nature. So it's possible to have a deep relationship with the animals. When you move beyond eating them, then you can have a much deeper affinity with nature. And you can go out into nature, and lizards and all kinds of other creatures will speak to you and communicate with you and teach you about all kinds of things. That's not possible when you're locked up into this idea that animals are for food,
Right. And one of a friend of mine here said once, and I like this analogy, is, the animals were never kicked out of the Garden of Eden. We were. So yeah, they're still in that vibrational place where they're connected into more of that divine source, and I do appreciate, as someone who comes from an animal activist background, I do appreciate that, you also take on, talking about that topic, because I do feel it is one that's important, because how we treat the earth, how we treat those other beings, those sentient beings, is also
crucial.
It really is, and how we treat one another. So we're coming down to the last part of our show. What can people expect this year? I know you talked about we're going to be seeing some upheaval and things this year as relayed to you by the star beings. Are there specific timelines, marker points that we should be aware of in the next few months or so?
Well, I see that the peak of the solar flares is going to be like January, February next year. But this year, I believe we're going to see like an escalation of the war with Syria and possibly even Iran. Now, this isn't going to affect the whole world, but this is going to be a karmic crisis that unfolds. And this is a necessary process in the healing of humanity. So people need to not be afraid about it, not to judge it, but just see it as a natural process. And I think we're also going to see a lot more uprisings with the world governments. Many people are becoming disillusioned with the economic and political systems. And as this new energy continues to come in and push forward the awakening within humanity, I think we're going to see lots more of this activism, people going out in the streets and protesting and demanding change. So people need to be prepared for this kind of upheaval.
And what do you see for yourself? I really do like also that you engage the social media, that you're actually actively using, YouTube, and Facebook and things, and we're going to be posting all those in our chat. What's on your horizon? Are there any new projects that you're working on, any books or anything that are on your horizon that may be of value to our listeners?
Starting to write my third book, which is called Living from Source, The Gateways to Intergalactic Immortality. So this third book's going to be ready in October because I can write books very quickly. So this is a follow-on to my last two books. And then I'm going to be appearing at the May 2012 conference in Mexico in December, where there's going to be lots of authors and speakers there. And I'm also developing my macabre project. I don't know if you're aware, but I create these geometric macabres out of these different components. So people can check those out at www.ascension2012.org.uk. So I'm planning to exhibit these macabres hopefully in Europe sometime later in the year. They're very intricate structures that open up the consciousness, these other dimensions, and they resemble multi-dimensional starcraft and the macabre vehicles. So there's plenty for me this year.
You're a busy guy, Free Spirit.
And then hopefully Hawaii, we're planning to go to Hawaii for early 2013 to live there and set up a retreat center.
Excellent.
Oh, that's awesome. So I think we've covered a lot of ground in today's show.
We did.
Yeah.
We spanned the gamut. And those of you out there, Free Spirit is completely accessible. It's a great teacher coming with great information and knowledge, So be sure that you reach out, go to his website, download some of the books, really go to his YouTube page and watch those videos. There's so much information. When someone is actively not just putting the information out, but someone who's living their path and actually engaging the process themselves, it allows you to see how it's unfolding. So be sure you're going out there and supporting those who are really doing this work. Free Spirit, is there anything you want to leave our listeners with tonight? We just have a few more minutes here, but is there anything that you want to leave everyone with as we close out the show?
The main thing is I'd encourage people to really engage with their processes and try and step out of their fear and, really open up to expansion and new possibility. The age of the Ascension is upon us, and, I'd just like to encourage people to engage deeper with the processes. And yes, things can be difficult in that cleansing, I just want to tell people that there is an end to that tunnel, and you can emerge on the other side into this expansion of love, joy, and abundance. And it's possible to be healed of all of this suffering and crisis. So I just encourage people to, watch more of my videos, go to my website and, use some of the tools that I've created to help you with your healing and cleansing process.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's definitely a lot of multi-dimensional excitement to look forward to, that's for sure.
And subscribe to YouTube YouTube, because every couple of days there's more videos, so they just keep coming through the channel.
Well, we really thank you, Free Spirit, for coming on tonight and sharing, your connection, your knowledge. This has been a very engaging discussion, and we definitely want to have you back on again as time unfolds, and especially as some of these more global or galactic events start to unfold, and feel free to send us stuff too. If you hear anything like an invasion happening, please let us know.
I'll let you know, yeah.
And we'll get it out to all of our listeners as quickly as possible. So that's about it. So
yeah, thank you so much, Free Spirit, for taking the time to be on the show.
Yeah,
I know you're.
It's been a pleasure to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, and your day's just getting started now, so you got the sunrise going on there still, I imagine.
7 in the morning now. Yeah, I got up at about 4:30, but the energies were so strong last night I could hardly sleep anyway. So these solar flares.
Well, I think with that said, I think me and Michael need to get some rest of our own and sort of take in some more of these solar flares as we go through that sleep process once again. So to everyone listening, thank you again for joining in. And if you have not already, join us on the Facebook pages, facebook.com/ParadigmShiftRadio, and as well join us on facebook.com/ParadigmShiftCentral, and you'll get more news updates from both of those places. So, Michael, any...
Yeah, that's it, folks. Next show, Monday night, Eastern Standard Time, 9:30 p.m. Myself and David Salisbury for The Psychic and the Witch, coming to you live. We'll be discussing all things spiritual, 2 spiritual paths, 1 direction. So thank you all so much. You are all loved. You are all beautiful. You are all divine. And we'll see you next time.
See you guys.
Bye.